but in Europe and North America, it's not a highly allergenic food. Tapioca, millet, certain vegetables, the nightshades are not in this list, and fruits, like no citrus there, and lentils for protein. Now you can live on that diet for 2 weeks, and it might surprise you. You might think, oh my goodness, I'd go nuts, but there's actually a lot of things you can do with rice. There's noodles, there's wraps, there's rice cakes, so it actually gets more interesting. You can have stuffed squash with grains in it, and pear sauce. So this is a few foods diet. Then you start adding things in. Okay, I'm going to add eggs. And, well, a lot of vegans wouldn't do that. But you could add the thing that you're worried about and see whether there's a reaction. Okay. What are the most common food allergens in North America? And also, I should have put in Europe because it's the same. So here they are. And these 8 are responsible for 90% of the food allergies. So these are the top allergens. And we left all of these out of this book, plus we left out animal products. So, and it still made nutritionally adequate menus and good recipes. So it's actually helpful for people that are not quite sure what they're allergic to or have multiple allergies. But it can be that people have added a few things in, they find gradually they have to eliminate a few foods.
What's a tree nut?
Tree nuts. That was just a different way of differentiating between peanuts, which are ground nuts, and tree nuts are almonds and walnuts and hazelnuts. They have somewhat different protein qualities, so you aren't necessarily allergic to one and the other. Yeah.
When you say top allergens or allergies,
yeah.
do you now include the intolerances in that, or you specifically look, because on the first slide you presented the difference between allergens and intolerances. Are you now using that term loosely?
The intolerant, if we talked about intolerances, the big one is milk, and cow's milk, and dairy, because that's like 70% of the world's population. So that was for true allergies.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Now, if we start looking at some practical things, what is helpful for people is to know, okay, how do I detect whether there's some egg in something? Well, often we want to know this as vegans or vegetarians as well, but there are certain tips like vitellin or ova might mean egg. Anyway, there's different words that will symbolize or signify that there's a certain ingredient. So we spent some time putting all those words together. Then, and terms that indicate the presence of, so specific label words. And fortunately, different European countries, the UK, the United States, Canada, have all been tightening up label laws because allergens have become a serious problem for many people. And we've also put in little tips about restaurants, travel, shopping. But one of the main things that I think is important is not just to be able to leave things out. I know with celiac disease, for example, with candida, people start leaving things out, but they often don't then build the nutritious diet that they need. And so you want to not only know what to eliminate, but also how to create a nutritionally adequate diet with what's left. And you sometimes have to learn more things. Here, my allergy test suggests that I may have been intended for another planet. It can really feel that way in traveling, but you can end up with a pretty simple and actually very nourishing plan. There can be tremendous benefits when we move to a more simple diet that is based on vegetables, fruits, the gluten-free grains, and so you can find out in the process, after your initial horror at what you have to leave out, that you have a diet that's much higher in protection against chronic disease, and it's lower in saturated fats, animal protein. So it's not such a bad thing after all. looking at different nutrients, this is one that can be helpful because you can build different types of diets. For example, with if we're looking at like the World Health Organization type recommendations, 10 to 15% of calories from protein when you're getting nutritionally adequate calories, and your fat being less than 30%, and carbs being 50 to 75%, then you can see that with children, for example, you want lots of fat in the diet. Well, you can do that with something like an avocado, maybe an athlete, a high energy person. If you want lots of protein, you actually can get plenty from some of these vegetables and from legumes. And so we can put together a pattern that will keep our blood sugar level, that will give us the protein we need, that can be higher in fat and keep us going. Guide to meal planning. For each meal, it's important to include a serving of vegetables and fruits, legumes, nuts, if people are not sensitive to those, seeds, and the grains can be gluten-free, calcium-rich foods, and in our other presentations here, we talked about calcium-rich foods, omega-3s, but I'll mention a little bit about the calcium foods. So these are just some examples of ways to get calcium. And it certainly doesn't require dairy, it doesn't require fortified soy milk, so there's different ways of doing this. And you can end up with supplements. And I was just asking Stephen Walsh if his veg one is gluten-free and it's dairy-free, wheat-free, and he's going to check into what else it's free of. But we've listed some really common allergy supplements that are hypoallergenic. So there are a number of different possibilities here, and you can certainly meet your calcium needs. With omega-3s, the list is similar to what we showed earlier in the week, the ground flaxseed, the walnuts, flaxseed oil. You've got to eat a lot of greens to meet the recommended about 2.2 grams, and even double that is a good idea. With infants, your child, if you're pregnant and or considering a family and you have allergies, you would expect not that your child would end up with the same food sensitivity as you, but that if you have a tendency towards allergies, they will be more likely to be allergenic. And the more people, the more parents and siblings and so on, the higher their risk. But it doesn't mean they'd be allergic to the same thing. It's probably something to do with their intestinal permeability, things like that. So it's not specific allergies. Then during lactation, it's important for the mother to avoid her allergens during pregnancy. And breastfeeding is a good idea, but it's good to avoid her allergens. With children, you stop with those low allergenic foods, as we talked about before in the Few Foods diet. Can food allergies be outgrown? Here's what somebody, whoops, I just touched the wrong thing. Let's see. How did I get that to go away? There it went. Okay. It seems that for the very serious food allergies that can be anaphylactic, we never get over them. We should never even test whether we're better now without doing that in the lab. But for many of the allergies, after a year or two, if we avoid that scrupulously, the symptoms have changed and we're not still reacting to that food. Now, there was an idea, she's saying, he's saying, I got the allergist reporting allergic to roses, mums, gardenias, and flower print bed sheets. That was just because it used to be believed that you were allergic to one, say, nut or something in a botanical family. You were always allergic to everything remotely related.